provided the building shell for the advertising firm project. So you have this CAD file that you've downloaded, and we're going to kind of walk through and kind of go over an overview of the building and its existing conditions. So this is a multi-story building that your client's space will occupy on the 22nd floor. One thing to note is your client will not be utilizing all of this space. This is a multi-tenant floor plate. Your client is actually only going to use about 4,500 square feet, which you'll kind of see that blocked off in just a moment. It's important to note that this is a glass curtain wall building, meaning this building has windows that go floor to ceiling, and the mullions are 5 feet apart on center. So if we were to measure this from this point here to this point here, get right on center, we've got 5 feet. And that helps us a lot as you go to space plan, because you can easily grid out offices, because as you're going to learn, you'll find that offices typically are in increments of 5 to 10 feet. So if we have a 10 by 10, 10 by 15, 15 by 15, 20 by 15, so it's easy to just offset and to kind of quickly lay out offices to get a test fit. So that is one helpful thing to note. But as you go through and you do start placing office or walls or partitions, it's important to note that no wall that is designed can terminate or end in the middle of a window. So if you are, for example, designing an office space, it has to end on either a mullion or either the center of a column, or even here, it just has to come off of a structural object or mullion. No walls can terminate in glazing, or otherwise known as the window. As we go through, how do we actually determine our occupancy space for our client? Now, in the client profile, it's really important that you read through that and make notes. But what I've done is over here is copied this, so you won't actually see this. This is what you'll see when you open your file. But just for clarification and kind of highlighting of the existing conditions, your client's space is going to occupy the northwest corner of this floor plate. And so what that means is when we come out of the core here, so this is the core of the building that runs from the lobby to the penthouse floor. The guests will exit the elevators here, and they could either go left or right. So obviously your tenant space is here, so they're going to go right to enter, and you will end up designing the location of the doors to center right on this space, because you'll read in the client profile that that's a requirement. And that'll start to determine some of the adjacencies for where your room locations will be. But because this is a multi-occupancy floor plate, that means that all occupants of this floor, all businesses, must be able to access the lobby, the stairs, the restrooms, because there are no private restrooms inside of the suites. So any employee or guest will have to come and use the restrooms located in this core. So to make them accessible, we have to first lay out a public corridor. So before you actually start space planning with your schematics and bubble flows, you want to make sure that you go ahead and offset from the wall here 60 inches. The minimum corridor width is actually 44 inches by code. However, that can be narrow, and it can also cause some issues with meeting all egress requirements for emergency exits, etc. Also, when you're designing 60 inches, it allows two people to walk side by side comfortably. It ensures that we can meet the minimum codes. So you want to make sure that this corridor is just 60 inches all the way around. And by doing that, that will allow you to place the entrance doors into your suite, and then you'll end up locating the emergency exit along this wall as well. So then if there was another client, maybe the entry for their suite is over here, and then another one over here, because this might actually be 2 to 3 other tenants on this floor, depending on the building leasing and requirements and everything. So you're going to have this space to work with. So how do we find the demising walls? So if you look at the client profile, you will see that on the west side of the building, it states that 10 feet below column 6, so let's find column 6, we can see that we have some grid bubbles up here, and these are alphabetized while these are numerical. So over here, we're going to look at the northwest because we can see that this is the north arrow. This is the west side of the building. So we're up here in the northwest, column 6. That from the center of column 6, that the demising wall will be 10 feet below. So if I take a line, draw a line straight across, I can offset that down 10 feet, which ends directly here on this mullion. So this is our demising wall and the end of our lease space on the side of this side of the building. Then on the north side up here, all the way to column E is this from the center is the demising wall. Now it's important to note that the leasing manager does allow a 5 to 10 feet in either direction of adjustment if more space is needed. But the goal is to stay around 5 to 10 feet for the total lease space, because that would allow, if I go offset 5 feet, I'd be right here on this mullion or right here on this mullion. Same thing here. If I offset, I would land in the center of this column or right here on this mullion. But it's important because leasing extra space can cost quite a bit more money. So the goal is to stay within the original parameters, but if needed, you do have a little bit of flex space of 5 to 10 feet. Now, make sure to remember that as you're working through that you have glass curtain walls, so that means your windows are going to go from floor to ceiling. The overall ceiling height for this space is going to be 12 feet max that you have to work with. You can vary ceiling heights in various spaces all the way down to 8 feet. You can go no lower than 8 feet in any given area as part of the client program. And something to think about is when you are designing, especially when students are working in the beginning and first starting projects, if you were designing an office that's say 10 by 10, 10 feet by 10 feet, you don't want the ceiling heights to be 12 feet in there. It starts to become cavernous. It can cause a lot of issues with reverberation and echoing and just acoustics. So it would make sense to maybe bring the ceiling height down to 8 feet, 8.6, or even 9 feet. But then in areas where we want to make more of an impression, such as maybe the reception or the conference room, we could vary the ceiling heights or raise them up to make a grander statement and so on. So it allows for flexibility. But as you go through and you begin development of your project, it's very important that if you have questions regarding the building shell and requirements, to make sure to reach out to your instructor.